Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, a weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. I am beat. My body is not made for things. I'm turning 35 this month, and my body is not made to do super early wake-ups and like day-long streams anymore. I woke up early to play Octopath Wednesday because I was going to have it at like 6 a.m. the day before because I was doing my whole New Zealand trick with PlayStation, and played that the entire day, and then I had to wake up at like 4 a.m. on Friday, and I basically had to work and or play 14 from like 5 a.m. all the way through the live letter, State of the Realm, and then I had raid that evening. So I'm beat, dude. My body has not recovered from that. I've been trying to enjoy Octopath Zero this week, so I haven't been working all too hard, but I have, of course, put a handful of videos out. We've had some sponsored stuff, some shorts, and I'll have more of that coming this week. I'm also going to be trying something else this week. I think you'll take notice on the channel for something that I'm going to be trying to do consistency wise, but we will see if it works. I'm not going to say it now because then if I don't do it, you'll know exactly the thing I didn't do. But I'm going to be starting with this video, so it won't take long to figure out what it is either. But it's actually like 30 a.m. I stream at 10 a.m. So I want to get through this real quick. Shout out to everyone on Patreon for supporting. Nobody has to support. All my content is available for free, but anyone who is a channel member or over on Patreon, thank you greatly. And if I ever see messages about that kind of stuff in my weekly Q&A, I'll make sure to draw attention to it. But with that, I don't think I have a Magic Spoon sponsor for this video. I might. I mean, maybe it'll be ready before then. If not, though, we'll get on to the first question. This will probably be a shorter episode, I'm assuming. No lightning rounds, but I just don't think it'll be that long of an episode. Before we get started, this video has a sponsor, Magic Spoon. They make high-protein cereal and snack products that anyone can enjoy for any diet. Every month, I grab some cereal, and especially some treat bars, and I use them to mix things up when I need something that's just higher in protein. I grab them after a workout, when I first wake up. I mean, honestly, whenever. It kind of just hits the spot regardless, and tastes great. So if you'd like to try Magic Spoon while also supporting the channel, then click the link below to get some today. Build your own custom box of products with tons of available flavors. Definitely recommend the maple waffle if you're getting some cereal to match your daily needs. Best of all, use my link and discount code Mr. Happy to get $5 off your box. You can also buy it at your local grocery store or even on Amazon if that's more convenient for you. And if you don't like it, Magic Spoon has a 100% happiness guarantee. Let them know and they'll refund you, no questions asked. So click the link below or scan the QR code on the screen and use code Mr. Happy to get $5 off, or go to magicspoon.com/Mr. Happy to save $5 on your order. It even works in Canada and the UK. Thanks again to Magic Spoon for sponsoring, and on with the video. I just got out of the shower, my hair's wet, and it's even when my hair is like freshly cleaned, it gets way more in my face. So you're probably going to be seeing me like picking at my face a little bit more because I get like hair in my eye and stuff like that too. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. What's up, Happy? What's up? Hope you're having a good day. Yeah, my day just started. I did do some moons this morning in Ostras, and I got the Blue Moon helmet. So I'm, what's a 5 out of 12 now for all the drops? I guess that's good. The claim of job identity for 8.0. I talked to a buddy of mine who's been playing the game since Heaven's Word. He wishes we could go back to Stormblood in terms of job design. I know the idea of going back to how jobs were in Stormblood is highly unlikely, but it got me thinking, what could they do with the way jobs currently are to get similar to Stormblood's balance of easy to learn but hard to master? Well, I think it's important to distinguish what people even agree on as job identity in the first place, which I do have a separate video. I made a video about it, but I'm going to have kind of a follow-up video to it. I actually recorded most of it and then just kind of didn't like how it turned out, so I decided I would re-record it, and I'll be aiming to get that out this week. But okay, first we need to accept what probably won't come back. You probably won't be getting TP back. You probably won't be getting individual resistances back, slashing resistance, piercing resistance, all of that. So you just probably won't see those types of things. So as long as people don't use those to achieve job identity, then that's okay. What really it comes down to is how involved do you want the time between burst windows and the management of your skills to play an active role in your overall damage. The big thing that happened as we moved into Shadowbringers and Endwalker is not only did they like give every job a gauge and make sure that every job was like, you know, able to succeed in more scenarios, but they also made it so that there were less and less windows for you to play incorrectly. if that makes sense. Like, yes, you could technically play incorrectly between your burst windows now, but if your burst window contains most of your tools in it, you'll still generally succeed. The big thing is that the number of outliers is lower. So like at the 1 minute mark, there's really not as much of an outlier as there used to be. You kind of peak a little bit on a chart, but on the 2 minutes, everybody just super peaks. And what that creates is a situation where you're effectively only super concerned about those windows, and everything else is just kind of low tier maintenance that doesn't involve the player all that much. If you really want to increase both identity and, you know, the hard to master part, you need someone to be actively being good at the job at all times throughout a fight. And the people who are unable to manage that upkeep will be generally lower performing than other players. I mean, they took away like the importance of bard dots, for example, like how influential those are to the way you get your procs and the way that it involves your songs. You know, they move that entirely into just being a proc chance based on the song, which effectively is better. It makes bard usable in more situations, but takes away that kind of maintenance level. And then you have to consider not needing a target for the songs. You know, that is another thing that makes the maintenance level aspect much easier. So I think that what Stormblood did is the amount of attention that you were generally paying to your rotation in between burst windows was a lot more important. There were also more opportunities for you to burst, opportunities at 30, 60, 90, 120. So it was, I always say Shadowbringers especially exemplified this, the 30-second buff windows, where if you did die and fall off, you could kind of hop back on the wagon because you knew some things were still going to be aligning and that it wasn't a complete loss. Would it have been completely ideal? No, but that's the punishment for dying. So I think that it's a lot of getting back to that, about the maintenance in between buff windows actually feeling meaningful for your player and skill expressions, while also with the actual identity part, because that's not even job identity, that's just specifically the Stormblood balance of easy to learn, hard to master, just answering that last bit, while simultaneously giving each job a unique feel during that time. And the new video I'm making will actually cover a lot of that, but you know, one teaser, I think I may have even mentioned it in last week's, Dancer having, you know, the Simon Says mini game and having, you know, like channeled skills like it does with improv. They could give it so that like managing those things in between the downtime is still really important. And then of course, how you manage them when other buffs are available, also important. There are a bunch of other opinions, which I'll cover in the video, but I think those are some good ways of looking at more closely achieving the Stormblood balance without necessarily removing a job's ability to be good in some scenarios. But I do think there needs to be more like, this job isn't as good at this and this job isn't as good at this, in order to create more of those opportunities. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello there, Haps. Hi. Long-time lurker, first-time poster. Welcome. I meant to ask this question a while back before the 7.4 Part 1 live letter, but kept putting it off. For context, you mentioned during a stated on that your static was recruiting with the stipulation you would not be raiding on Christmas Day if Savage released on the 23rd. As a static lead myself, this got me wondering how your static handles recruitment. My static is pretty casual and only raids for a total of 6 hours per week. We advertise on some Discord channels and also use the 14 Reddit website for the first time this tier and had success there as well. Sometimes I reach out to people advertising themselves, but I've had the most success from advertising my group through those channels and letting people reach out to me. How different is the recruitment process for what is my perspective a much more hardcore and high profile static? It's identical. It's literally just a matter of trying to have enough reach that you have parties that you're interested in and parties that are interested in you. For example, if you were, honestly, I just equate it to the job market. If you were someone in charge of recruitment at a startup or something like that, you know, you couldn't just put your name out and hope for the best. You would actively be seeking out talent. I got something in my eye. I apologize. I warned you this was going to happen. There we go. I got it. But on top of that, you would look at your applications and see who is the most suited, and you would, you know, put them through an interview process. It's pretty much the same. The only thing that is probably stricter is the terms through which you do recruitment. Like we, you know, of course, need to make sure that we actually try people out. We don't just look at a resume. We need them to see them actively in the field. We got to take them through content. We got to see how they communicate. You have to see how they actually handle information. You try to take them into things they actually don't actively know. Like, that's why Criterion's been great. So many people skipped Criterion that a lot of the times when we trial, we're like, well, we want to see how they function in a place where they know as little as possible. And the criterions, more often than not, are actually a good place to kind of get that information about a raider, how they see mechanics, how they solve mechanics, how they quantify mechanics or learn. And those are all important things because they're all part of the communication and cohesiveness of the team. But in terms of the actual reach out, I mean, we made a post and we also said, does anyone know anyone? We basically just did exactly that. We thought of both avenues. And the only thing I would say we really didn't do is look at individual people posting on recruitment, being like, I am looking for a group. We really wanted the people who saw our criteria and said, yes, those are criteria that we that individual thinks is right for them. So I would say that's really the only difference, but we did still think of individuals. It was just like, do we actually know them personally? And like, can we see if they maybe are interested in rating this tier, or if they have a group, etc., etc. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey, Happy. Hi. Hope all is well in your world and that this is being posted in time. It was posted 4 days ago. Holy moly. If I've recorded the weekly Q&A, what would that be on, like Thursday? That'd be wild. My question is about how the few hours will work prior to the first weekly reset. You've talked about having 4 weeks of tomes a few different times. I was wondering if I had not had to get tomes 6 days prior to the patch, or if the patch would reset the 450. Hope this is a clear enough question. It's not, but let me explain it. So on patch day, December 16th, the servers will go live after weekly reset. So there will be 450, bam, we'll be good. You'll then have 3 weeks of time leading up to the release of Savage. So that's 3 weeks of tomes. However, the servers will be up on weekly reset when Savage releases at 1 a.m. Actually, I forget what daylight savings. They'll be up 2 hours before weekly reset. So you'll have a 2-hour time frame, or of course that entire week technically, to farm tomes before the Savage tier comes out. So when we say 4 weeks of tomes before Savage, we're including that 2-hour window where we really wish we were sleeping instead of farming tomes, but we're not, because of course we're not. We're trying to get that last little bit of gear before the raid actually comes out in order to help us through. Because that is the 4th week. Now, of course, you don't have to be a hardcore raider for that to apply. If you're someone who just raids, like the previous question, 6 hours a week, then, you know, maybe you're not even raiding till like Friday and Saturday. So you now have that whole week anyway to accrue the tomes of the 4th week, which is the week that Savage actually comes out. So that's what we're in reference to when it comes to having 4 weeks of tomes before the Savage tier. Hashtag Mr. Mondays with Happy. Hi. Good morning, Haps. Good morning. Wanted to ask some advice when it comes to content creation. Hokey dokey. Some context, I've reached a point where content creation has the possibility of being a real side hustle at the very least. I know very little about sponsorships and networking involved, and I'm totally not hungry and jealous of your Magic Spoon sponsors. They're good. I like it. In past, you've mentioned sort of stumbling into the career when it comes to finding and forming these kind of relationships with sponsors. How did you go about that? Did they contact you first or the reverse? It depends. I'd say the only company I've actively worked with, there's 2 companies I've actively worked with that I sought out. One was SteelSeries, because I wasn't getting anywhere with Razer, and not to mention my Razer products just broke nonstop. So I guess it was probably for the better anyway. So I sought them out at a live event at a TwitchCon, actually. And that relationship, you know, has continued and blossomed to what it is today. The other was actually Butterfinger, where I recorded a video on social media. They announced like the Final Fantasy VII remake, not rebirth, collaboration with Butterfinger, where if you like sent them a picture of a receipt where you purchased 5 or more Butterfinger, you like got some in-game items, whatever. So I made like a social post that was like, wait, Butterfinger's collabing with Final Fantasy VII? And then it was me at the grocery store just shoveling Butterfinger into like a shopping bag, and then looking at the other candy bars and being like, no, and then just shoveling more Butterfinger. That caused them to reach out to me. So I'd say that it's, how do I put this? When you have enough of a reach individually, you're someone who creates content and you have, you know, however many thousands of views a video or per stream or whatever, they'll see you as an advertising asset and they'll reach out to you. Before that, you kind of have to put in any legwork for companies you do want to work with. And even then, Cold calling just doesn't work most of the time. I'd say there's usually creative solutions to working with companies, and it's why a lot of people actually do go to live events. But if you go to live events and you try to be kind of like, oh, I get it, it's whatever, like, it's a long shot, but you can't really do that. You got to be like, hey, I'm looking to do this, I'm looking to work with this, I want to negotiate. But you gotta actually have some get up and go, a little bit of grit, And I'll be honest, I don't have that most of the time. I try to respect that they get that from dozens, hundreds of people who want to do the same thing. And so I tend to focus more on personal relationships than professional ones. If I meet someone who works at a company that I want to work with, I don't go to them and be like, hey, I'm here to meet you because of this. I'll be like, oh, I'm here to meet you because I enjoy your products. And it's nice to know someone at the company, but I will almost sometimes I'll not even ask. I'll just be like, I don't expect you to just give me a sponsorship, but like, I want to make a connection, and then, hopefully you're a cool person or whatnot. And I genuinely like try to not hyper pursue, those kind of like, oh, well, I know you now, so give me this, which a lot of people do. I tend to just like focus on the person as the person. And then if they see me as a fit, then they already know me, right? And that's just as good as it gets. I'd say that's not that effective, but I don't know. I know that like people in the gaming space and people at companies, they deal with so many people just trying to get their business. And it's like, okay, yeah, but there's a person here. And I tend to focus more on that, which is just, and honestly, not good advice. Like, I hate to say, like, it's the human thing to do, but it's not good advice, technically, business-wise. You should be going in with a purpose and a function, but it's just never how I've really done it. And it's been okay for the most part. I've developed enough professional relationships that I have a pretty steady flow, especially during busy seasons for sponsorships and advertisers and whatnot. So I'd say it works okay. Speaking of which, I'll include the Cook Unity link in the description again. I should have done that at the start of the video. Hashtag Mondays with Lord Glad. Yeah, that's what it would be if I was like hundreds of years ago. I am Lord Glad. Hello, and I am stealing a hello from the previous person. Damn, that's messed up. I want to ask you a question that should dungeons be reworked as well? Speaking, I know you meant to say speaking, but it's specacking. Someone who does do dailies pretty often, I find myself bored by the current structure of two trash pulls, boss. I find myself wanting something like platforming for extra chests, or having to pay attention to one enemy that gives you a ball. The paying attention to one enemy thing they used to do all the time. They just don't do it much anymore, and that I'd be fine with. Maybe this could be where the hard mode version of the dungeon comes in. There's obviously some problems of rewards, but I think max level version of leveling dungeons and putting them in a roulette would be more than enough. Also give people another way to get crafted gear. I don't think we need any more ways. Crafted gear is like, we don't know. You don't want to put crafted gear in dungeons. That's not a good idea. You could maybe put some materials in there as an option. Like, I guess that wouldn't be the end of the world. It would bring the price down even faster, which is another not good thing, I suppose. But I mean, they have done it before. They've just kind of not done it recently. They've used dungeons more as set pieces, and basically they want almost any dungeon to be at most 30 minutes in and out. So if somebody only has an hour to play, they can do that plus something else per day. And that's unlikely to change. It's really in the variant dungeons where you're going to get the thing that you're asking for, and they need to do that well. And that needs to be roulettable. Like, you can level in the new variant dungeon, but in reality, it really needs to be just more accessible from like a menu standpoint. Sticking it in the VNC Finder separately without good education or systems, like at the very least in the Duty Finder at the top, should be an option to open the VNC Finder instead of it just being a separate menu option. It's like, yes, you can have it as a separate menu option, but somebody should be able to click the top menu or even the roulette menu and it should just have an option to take you to the VNC Finder so that you can do the dungeons there. And then those dungeons need more support because those dungeons are more dynamic. So I think, honestly, the answer is you probably want variant dungeons. You just want them to be more the standard of dungeons, or to at least be supported in such a way that you feel good going in and spending, a time enough for a dungeon as a daily in the variant dungeon. And honestly, this might be a standalone video worth idea, because I wanted to do a video really calling for them to treat rival wings with a bit more respect. And the two-player PvP modes as a whole, they've kind of mowed through most of them, and now it's just Crystalline Conflict and Hidden Gorge. They got rid of Astrologos. They've cycled out of things like the Fold and the Feast and the 8v8 Feast and the 4v4 Feast. So I feel like there's just like a general disrespect for the two-team modes, and I'm not sure why. They just don't care. Like, why does Rival Wings not have a daily bonus? Why don't we have like a more like a larger scale crystalline conflict mode? Or why don't we have, you know, a capture the flag mode on a capture the flag mode on a map the size of like maybe slightly bigger, like maybe about double the size of a crystalline conflict map? I think it would be great. And just doesn't require 48 to 72 people. And this is kind of the same thing. It's like they kind of just treat variant like it's just off on its side. It's its own thing. And they don't really consider that much the inconvenience of going out of your way to do these things. So I'll just keep campaigning for VNC to be treated better than it is. And you might reap the rewards if they ever actually listen enough to do something like that. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, hi. With 8.0's job changes coming up, while they don't expect to be fully disconnected from the 2-minute meta, do you think it's possible to get jobs with 60 raid-wide buffs, maybe even 30s, just to allow for a bit more variety? I think it depends on... So let me say this. Anything's possible, technically. It'd be silly of me to say, no, that's impossible. In fact, we just talked about it earlier in this very video. But... do I think I'm in the same boat as you? I don't expect to be fully disconnected from the 2-minute meta, and I think that's an important thing in their design, but that limits the amount of creative things they can do with jobs as a whole. I think we do need to accept that some jobs will be better or worse at certain things when they do this, and it won't be perfect. Your favorite job, it could just not be a very valuable job. It could just not be a very desired job. You may get almost made fun of. Like, I've mentioned in some other videos about how, like, Paladins got made fun of during Heaven's Ward, and Monk got made fun of and stuff like that. That could happen again. It totally happen again, and it wouldn't just be like, oh, the Dragoon jumped off the side, or the Red Mage backflipped off, or, like, it wouldn't be like the little, like, almost, like, grade school things now. It would be like, bro, your job is full-on garbage. Get it out of here. What are you doing? And they wouldn't be entirely wrong, technically. But I think, yes. Is it possible? Sure. But I think there's also the possibility they go the other way, where there's actually very few job buffs that reach out to other people, and they focus more on how the job plays within itself. And then there's some job buffs that, you know, you can use. People have often pointed to Bloodlust in World of Warcraft, which is one of the main ways that, like, teams buff each other, and it's something that you use, you know, and it goes on a big cooldown, and you could just bring one person who uses it, and it gives it to everyone, and they just make sure that then a few different classes have it, so you'll always have one of those classes, but you're not forced to bring one specific one. So people have also suggested going that way with it, where there's just some classes, like maybe the Fizz ranged role, for example, has a super powerful buff that is given to the rest of the team, or some form of a super powerful buff, and everyone else focuses more on how their job actually plays as a core, and not about, like, lining up their buffs with everyone else's buffs. It's more like, oh, you know, Bloodlust is coming up, so let me make sure that I have my big buttons, you know, for that, as long as it doesn't cost me a use of my big buttons and blah, blah, blah. Or the team, like, looks at a time when, like, big buttons are easier to press, and then you use it. So that way you can focus more on that, I guess that what I talked about earlier, the filler experience, where what you're doing in between your big buttons is a lot more important than just pressing the big buttons once every 2 minutes. And honestly, what you said honestly does the same thing. It's just that imagine if it was like that, but with less raid buff involvement. But then you have to consider the synergy between the classes. That allows you to have a lot more individual fight synergy if you just have, like, not really any raid buffs, whereas the raid buffs give you more job synergy, and then that's a whole discussion. You know what I mean? Like, there's literally so many ways the discussion can go. So I'm just open to whatever they do. I guess I just don't think it's going to be as major as both they've implied and some people think it will be. I'm very much in the not going to take it that far, whatever happens kind of mentality. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi and good morning. Hi. Hope you're doing well. You too. Whether they are here to stay or not, do you think getting rid of role quests in favor of individual job quests would help them get their identity back? I mean, I wouldn't mind. I would say this, that eventually the job quests didn't feel like they had identity. Like, it would have to be the same level of job quest that we had way back when, and for 21 different jobs. I mean, that's just, I just imagine it's a development pain, so I totally get why it's not like that. Locking job skills behind the job quest gave a good sense of identity. Logging job skills behind the job quest sucks, and I'm definitely not going to be in favor of that. But having job involved quests, I think, is something that's a-okay. It's like, I understand what you're saying with the summoner example, but it sucks to have to do all those quests. Like, you're like, oh, I'm riding through, I'm doing that, and then like, well, I gotta stop because now I'm useless without skill XYZ. So definitely not in favor of that. But individual job stories, I think, does help. And even if you don't lock the job skills behind the quest, using the job skill to explain, or the job quest to explain your skills, makes them make more sense. So like, let's say you weren't locked to summoning the high-end primals behind the quest, but the quest explains why you're able to summon the primals and, you know, the Bahamut, solar Bahamut and whatnot, like an actual lore explanation for those things that's in-game and tied to a piece of media that you can just do at any point. I think there's value in that. I just don't think they'll do it because there's too many jobs. And that's literally all there is to it. This isn't they moved to role quest because there's too many jobs, not because it was like they didn't want to write job stories anymore. So I don't see that being undone, as we're probably going up to 23 non-limited jobs at +2 limited jobs by 8.0. Hashtag Mondays with the Mr. Happy. Why do I have Dream Paragon versus Ragnaros 25-man heroic in my rack? I guess because I've been talking about WoW in this video. My question is a curiosity. If they would make an ultimate for a trial series or alliance raid series, which one would you like the most? I want the what are they called? The Four Lords, because I want to fight Kieran. We know, or Koryu, I think is what they actually call him for this one, which to be fair is the same thing. But I want to fight Kieran/Koryu. We know we get a cutscene that implies some like major struggle at the end with Tenzin and all that. I want that in a fight. So they win. Easy answer. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello, Mr. Happy. Hi. First of all, sorry for my winkly wonkly English, as it's not my native. Oh, was this the question last week where I didn't understand what it was? Yeah, I mean, that's fine. It's just, it's unfortunate when I see it and I go, man, it's not like I want to tell this person I don't understand what they're saying because they're trying, but I also don't want to get it wrong, and then it's just as bad. The question is, what do you think about seeing the Void Ark flying around some maps even before we got the raid? Oh, I loved that. And they do still do some kind of stuff like that, just not like teases for raids. They'll do that with, like, you know, after you finish the Alliance raid, where the Final Fantasy XI stuff, you know, you can find Prish and Alzal walking around, for example, and then they have like little lore tidbits, and then you can also find Omega and Alpha walking around, you know, after their raid series, and as we expand into new areas, we've managed to find them in more and more places, which has been really cool. I like seeing that kind of like tie in, whether it's before or after, but the before was great because we spent months and months and months speculating what the Void Ark even was. A lot of people thought maybe it was the Lunar Whale and we were going to the moon. And, you know, while I don't think anyone was necessarily right, it was just this cool little teaser in-game to have. And I think that it's good. And I think, as you ask here, mysteries like that are very good. And there are still a lot of mysteries in the past that were never answered. But I think patch to patch and expansion to expansion now, the amount of mysteries we have about any particular location or its function in the map have generally declined in favor of things that are explained. Like, they're not pointless or meaningless. They're just already explained and we know the answers. So I think that we could do with a little bit, as you say, more mystery. I think it makes things more interesting and fun. It makes the overworld feel more alive even when it isn't. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey, Haps. Hi. With 8.0 possibly adding a new phase range DPS, given the current state of the role, where do you see this new DPS being placed in the damage utility? I think it would be more like Machinist, where it's a little bit more selfish, has some damage. I mean, this really depends on the job identity changes, and I actually will go into this in that video I mentioned earlier, but I think it will be a lot more of a, you know, a less supporty facing job. Like, Machinist doesn't look supporty when you look at it as a player. It has some support tools, but it doesn't look like it, right? And I think this will be that, where it looks more like a selfish big hitter more than it does anything else. But I will have some speculation on that in the upcoming video, but I'll have some more speculation, obviously, as FanFast start rolling through next year. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey, oh, Haps. Hi, and a handful of hellos in case any were missed. With the many FF games with jobs having multiple variants of knights in the same game, could it be possible next tank job being released with the knight suffix? So, true story, knight is paladin in Japan. Now, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean they can't do it, but we actually just have knight. So, I don't know that they want another subdivision of knight name convention-wise. But, I mean, Mystic Knight is there. I mean, that's honestly, it's not like this Mystic Paladin. Like, the problem is I think in Japan and maybe some other languages, less in English, but I'm sure they could come up with a name that works just fine, you know, or or they could just rename it. I don't think it matters so much as what it looks like and what it plays as. I think the name is largely irrelevant. It's just that obviously as a Final Fantasy player, we like look at it and go, oh, I can identify that. But I mean, Dark Knight exists, and that's fine. So Mystic Knight should exist, and Dark Knight also didn't really match the job description that we expected it to have, so Mystic Knight wouldn't have to have exactly the thing we expect it to have either. So it works. They can do it. They've already got an example because we have Dark Knight and Paladin is called Knight in Japan anyway, so just Mystic Knight. But yeah, sure, whatever version of Knight they want to do. A few more questions I thought there were going to be. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Good day to you, Happy-san. Hi. Wanted to share my opinion on 14's direction following the recent live letter and Yoshi P's interviews. He's discussed changing game aspects to suit players with less free time. While I too have limited time, I believe such change would do more harm than good. I know exactly what you mean. So they should do the opposite and add more grindy content. A common complaint is that the new updates offer very little to do or can be finished in a few hours. Well, so you're looking at it too much in one direction. So you're forgetting another key component is that they want someone to look at a piece of content in the game and see more things on any given patch that they're interested in doing and then put time into them. So like, let's say if you are someone who looks at 10 pieces of content being released and only 4 of them are interesting to you, then there's 6 that aren't. They're trying to bring that up to 7 or 8. So in theory, you have more things to do on any given patch. Now, in terms of the raider or the person who wants something that's grindier, that's one way of adding that. So they could see something and be like, well, you know, it's whatever, I'll just do it one time and be done. But if they see something they can grind out and do, then that expands the doability of the content. So do I think they'll go that way? No, but I knew what you were going to say before we even got there, is because if you try to respect people's time too much, then you basically disrespect the amount of time that your own game involves. And when you're a business, you need people to be logging play hours. So I think that there will be other changes that are made that it won't like feel like there's less to play, but there will be more individual things to play. But this goes back to the reward thing, because if rewards are good, people will spend more time doing them, and that's better for the game in theory. So there's a lot of tie-ins, and there's really no way to know they're going to do. But if there's more things that people are interested in doing, like I'm someone who does like 8 to 9 things out of a patch, really just crafting and gathering stuff I don't do most of the time. And you know, that's why you see I'm usually more okay with any individual patch. Even if I can criticize parts of it, I'm usually more okay and I get more mileage out of most patches than most people do. Which is why, you know, you see me going and trying to do these like weird, like I've did my 3-month fishing grind. You know, I did a little bit of big fishing. I did do a bit of Faina. I got all my relics on the first planet, on the moon, I should say. You know, I go and do the Savage tier and I farm it every week, and I go and do every new ultimate as it comes out, and I do the variant and the criterion, and I climbed Pilgrim's Traverse several times. I was doing my challenge logs, and I cleared Quantum 40, and I did Chaotic when it came out, and I farmed Chaotic until I got literally every drop. So I have every single thing from Chaotic, and I got to sell an extra to boot. You know, I did Fru and it like, it sounds like I'm eating good, and it's because I am. It's because I do a lot of those different things. So if you have more things to do like that, then, you know, it does go a long way. So we'll see how it turns out at the end of the day, but it's not inherently a bad thing. And I, of course, wouldn't mind some more grindy content in the game, as long as it wasn't like, you know, no more 7 Years of Leaves. Just nothing of that caliber. Hashtag Lunisi Domnu Happy. That's Romanian. Salut. Do you think we are closely encroaching the point of needing to release new jobs every other expansion in order to keep up with balancing, changing, and tweaking the current roster? I mean, that's up to them. I don't know if their team feels the stress or not, and like, you know, how stressful it is. That's up to them. And if they hire more people, then probably not. I do think the idea of doing 2 jobs in expansion is asking for a bit much, but I mean, who knows? Some people have suggested at some point we'll just get a second like role for the same job, like Paladin getting a healer version, and that would replace getting a new job for the expansion. Again, it's one of those things. I can't say that won't happen, but you know, until it happens, I can't assume it will happen. So we'll see. Hashtag Mondays. Oh my God, there is that. Oh my God. Sorry in advance for the long one. I probably could have okay, so unfortunately, you've already... I'll use this as an example. Writing this much text and starting with, I was wondering what your opinion would be on this idea. I've said it many times in these videos. Just presenting me with an idea and my thoughts on it, I don't consider a valuable kind of insight. My insight does not mean anything. It doesn't add validity to it. It doesn't make the devs more likely to do it. And I also am not at liberty to like, yeah, sure, I could say, oh, I don't like that, or I do like it. But it just doesn't mean anything because it's your opinion and it's your thought, and you're free to have it. So going through this entire thing just to go with yeah, that's a good idea, or yeah, that's kind of cool, or nah, I don't like it. There's just not a whole lot of discussion, I guess, to be had, or at the very least, not one that involves this much text. So yeah. And this, honestly, this right here, I already touched on it earlier. Getting rid of raid buffs, and I talked about the pros and cons of it. So I guess you can refer back to that. But these questions are tough. They don't always not work, but when they involve a lot of reading and a lot of individual elements to be considered, they just don't work as good questions on the weekly connect, because it's not a question, it's a seeking of almost validation. And like I said, I've already brought it up, so I've already considered it, and it's literally, there's no, could it work? It's could they go in that direction? Sure. Could they not? Also, sure. There's pros and cons to all of them. There's no good answer. Like, it's literally, there's going to be a problem one way or the other with the give and take for doing anything a particular way. So there's just no way to say for certain yes or no. It just doesn't exist. We just have to wait and see what they do and then criticize that from there. All right, I'm running a little low on time. I didn't think there were going to be this many questions, so let me just pop through the last few. This next one was 14 currently supports multiple platforms on an account for separate licenses, but players still cannot both use Steam and Windows on the same account with the upcoming Steam machine entering the living room. Is there any chance this policy could change? No, because Steam needs to collect their money. That's the main reason why, is that Steam effectively needs to collect their money. As soon as you own it on both Steam and Windows, Steam is effectively cut out of the deal, because then you could just go and pay Windows and Steam will never see a dime. So no, Steam wants to collect their check, and it gives you access to the Steam wallet. There might be another technical reason, but that's probably never changing. And I don't really see the only reason it really needs to or doesn't need to exist, or a change in policy, is because signing up for the game on PC can be genuinely confusing for people who don't understand that Steam and Windows are different. It says it. They do say it, and if you follow the instructions, you'll know, but people just act first and then worry about the consequences later. So it's just one of those things that happens. Let's see. Mr. Happy, an extra hello if anyone forgets. And then playing around after a break after barely doing MSQ, almost ran into not being able to do the MSQ due to my item level being too low. My question is, now that I want to go back to EX Trials, how can I get gear quickly enough? Crafted gear. Crafted gear is always the answer. It's the fastest way back. Or the new weekly cap tomes, or even the previous uncapped tomes. But mostly weekly cap tomes and crafted gear will instantly get you back. Unfortunately, Gil's very easy to make in Final Fantasy XIV. After coming back from a break, if you were poor, you won't instantly have it, but if you're playing consistently enough, you'll get it quickly enough. Next one was, no most job identity talk is focused on gameplay, wanted to pivot to player aesthetics. Yeah, well, that's gone pretty much at this point, because we have all the individual glams. Like, you can set one up that makes you feel good for it, but that's about it. I really do miss the job quest. There was a happy medium with the way they did Shadowbringers, where they had the role quests and just one quest. Yeah, just one job quest. See, the problem I had is I felt that just one job quest was so pathetically bad, I didn't care. And then I was like, yeah, just go on with role quests. If this is what we'll get for job quests, then quite frankly, I don't care. It would have to be a very substantial quest, and now it would have to be, as I said earlier, soon in 8.0, 23 substantial quests. Otherwise, it just feels like a waste of my time, and I end up just not caring about it personally. And then I think this is the last question. Hey, Mr. Happy, past 2 tiers of this expansion have gone very poorly, starting with severe underperformance at M2 and M3, then a very yikes person revealing themselves to be so during M6. What are some red flags to look at when trying to find a group to play with? Everyone in the group should be able to publicly state what they want out of the group, and it be close to the same thing. Now, it's not guaranteed it's still going to work, because some people could say they want one thing and then start doing the tier and realize they were wrong about themselves. But honestly, when you're playing in more casual to mid-core groups, the amount of variance I find that people generally have is going to be higher. You know, like the amount of like different goals in person, because in more casual mid-core groups, there's a lot more people who, you know, if real life, like if their friend wants to go out on raid night, they don't want to be like, oh, I can't, I don't want to, I got a raid. Like they're going to try to find a way to get out of raid for that night, far more likely, because they live a normal life on top of playing Final Fantasy XIV. But then you have people who could play the same amount of hours, and maybe they just don't make plans very often, so that doesn't happen. And so they just, even just the mismatching of personalities. I feel like with higher tier groups, while there is some need to have that same element of overlap, there's also a need. People have at most times at least enough of a need to get through the tier as quick as possible and get better and improve, that people just leave and break and like recruit and redo things in between tiers, and they'll put up with not having as fun of a time for a tier if it gets them through it. It doesn't always work, but I feel like it's more likely to happen. So it sounds like you're searching between the types of groups, the casual and mid-core groups that just have more mismatches. And so you're more likely to kind of go between groups if it's not a tight-knit friend group. So it's tough. There's really unfortunately, I just don't have a good answer for you. You just kind of keep doing it until you find a group of people that enjoy playing with you and you really enjoy playing with. So there's only so much you can really do. It's just a giant social game at that point to try to find the right group of people. And it can be exhausting, like anything with social groups. And all I can tell you is you just got to keep trying. If that's what you want to do, then you buckle through and you just keep on trying. However, that is going to be a wrap for this week's episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and ask your questions for next week in the comment section of the video below. With that, I'm going to go play some Octopath, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, take care.